Live from the KDAL studios at Lake and Superior Street in downtown Duluth, it stars Over the Prairie with 8-time Minnesota Music Award winner Paul Metsa.
And I wish I could see stars over the prairie, stars over the prairie tonight.
Featuring cool people from all walks of life. Check out previous show podcasts at KDAL610.com. The phone lines are open at 218-722-0839. Now, here's Paul Metsa.
And I wish I could see stars over the prairie, stars over the prairie tonight. And I wish I could see stars over the prairie.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Stars Over the Prairie. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I got my wingman, Chris Allen, with me today, and we are celebrating Bob Dylan's birthday. We're just 237 somersaults down the hill from the Dylan Childhood Home. In fact, they're having a little party there today at 517 3rd Avenue that I'm going to hike up to after the show. But we've got so
You're not going to somersault uphill?
I'm going to try. I'm going to try. But we've got just a really great lineup of Dylan guests and memorabilia. We've got live music in the studio. We're going to do a phoner with Matt Steichen, Minnesota's biggest Bob Dylan fan. And we've got my friend Gino LaFond. He's in the entryway tuning up his guitar. He's going to talk about seeing Bob Dylan at the Scholar Coffee House in 59 and 1960. He's going to play a song or two for us. We're going to hear one of his new songs. He was also the guitarist for our late, great, good friend, Larry Keegan, who was a childhood buddy of Bob Dylan's. Larry and Bob met at Camp Herzl in Wisconsin, a Jewish youth camp, when they were just young teenagers. And over the years, Larry and Bob remained good friends. And when I got to know Larry in the late 80s, when Dylan was playing in town or playing in the upper Midwest, I'd call Larry, and Larry would always hook me up with seats in the first 5 rows. And so I'd go and see Bob, and I'd always, of course, run into Larry at those shows. And then a lot of the times, and our guest Gina LaFond will tell us about how Larry and Gina would take off in the van with Lorenzo and another one of Larry's handlers. Larry was a quadriplegic. And take off, and then Bob's bus would follow him. So we're going to hear all about that. Like I said, Matt Steichen will be talking to him in about a little less than 10 minutes. In the second hour, I was fortunate enough, growing up in Virginia, Minnesota, 22 miles east of Hibbing, to get to know a lot of the people that Dylan really came into as a young teenager in Hibbing and met, including his high school English and humanities teacher, B.J. Rolfson. And I've had a great chat that when I interviewed him, about 14 years ago, with Leroy Heuchel, a fellow Finn and drummer in Bob Dylan's high school band, the Golden Chord. So I'm doing a replay of both Leroy and BJ have passed on, but we've got some great memories from them in my own personal archive that I think you're really going to enjoy in the second hour. And then when we started Stars Over the Prairie just about 15 months ago, one of our first guests was Louis Kemp, Duluth native, also one of Bob Dylan's childhood friends. They remained friends for years. As a matter of fact, Mr. Kemp went on to road manage the Rolling Thunder Revue. So we had 2 interviews with Louis when we first started the show, so we are going to be replaying them. It's just a gorgeous day in Duluth. What is this? Got to be close to 60, Chris.
It is close to 60. I think it's supposed to reach almost 70 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is, I'm going fishing tomorrow, so...
We're all going to get sunburns.
Well, it's better than frostbite.
Exactly. You can still use everything.
That's right, exactly. Well, we've got just a really fun show today, growing up on the Iron Range, and then living in Duluth. I rented the first floor of Bob Dylan's childhood home in Duluth here from my friend Bill Pagel, who owns both the house in Duluth and the house in Hibbing. And now I live in Lincoln Park. I'll be in Duluth till the very end, which I hope is a long, long time away. I hope I live as long as Bob Dylan, who's 84 years old today. But I'm doing my best as a folk singer to take care of my Iron Range buddy Bob Dylan and celebrate his 84th spin around the sun. Man, the guy's just had an incredible journey. Other famous birthdays today. In 1686, Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit was born in Danzig in the Polish Commonwealth. Chris, do you have any idea what Daniel Fahrenheit invented?
I'm going to say it has something to do with weather.
He invented the thermometer. How the heck he did that in
then who's the Celsius guy that screwed it all up?
We got to track that guy down.
Right.
And we're not going to worry about Celsius today. We're going to worry about Fahrenheit. And Daniel was born in 1686, passed away in 1736. Queen Victoria was born in London. She was the queen of both the UK and Ireland. She was born in 1837 in London, passed away in 1901. There's a lot of my buddies out there that are golfers. I only golf once a year, and I'm absolutely horrendous at it. You know what they say about golf, Chris? If you want to get better, start younger.
Right. They also say that if you want to enjoy golf, stop playing.
Yeah, my dad quit. He was a golfer. He, I don't know exactly what the particular shot was, at what particular part of the golf course, but he wrapped one of his drivers around a tree and gave his golf bag away to the kid that was parking cars. My dad had a little bit of a temper every now and then. But Jimmy Demaret, he was the U.S. Masters Open winner 1940 and 47 and 1950. Was born in Houston, Texas in 1910. Lived to be 73 years old, passed away in 1983. Somebody else in the entertainment biz, Priscilla Presley. Elvis's wife was born in 1945 in Brooklyn, New York. She is celebrating 80 years around the sun today. Bless her.
Yeah. Still looks good.
She still looks good. I'm going to do a reading from my book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs that I put together when I was living at Dylan's house up there on 517 3rd Avenue. It's a 2.5-page piece in Alphabet Jazz, which I would like to remind you can get on Amazon. And if you see me at any of my gigs, I carry some around in my gig bag. But you don't need to have one in front of you to hear this first paragraph of my piece on Bob Dylan. I've got two pieces in there. I wrote a letter to the editor in City Pages after a fellow that just passed away, Burl Gilliard. May he rest in peace. Wrote dissing Bob. He had an article in the Twin Cities Reader a week before Bob came to do a 5-day stand at the Orpheum Theater in 1992, said, should this man be euthanized? That peed me off, and I wrote a letter to the editor taking Burl to task. But he passed away, so we remember him fondly. He was a great writer. But here's from my book, Bob Dylan, Highway 53 Revisited. 53 is the highway that goes from Duluth all the way to International Falls and winds its way through the Iron Range. And when you're going through the Iron Range, you'll go through my hometown of Virginia, Minnesota. And like I would like to remind people, if you're going through Virginia, on 2nd Avenue in Chestnut, stop by my buddy Gary Flamer's Bar. Flamer's Bar, it's one of the coolest bars on the Iron Range. They got pull tabs, well-priced drinks, lots of beers, and sports memorabilia. So if you're going up north to go fishing or hiking or just hanging out, make sure you stop by Flamer's Bar on the corner of Chestnut Street and 2nd Avenue. Here is Bob Dylan, Highway 53 Revisited, the first paragraph from my book, Alphabet Jazz, Poetry, Prose, Stories, and Songs. You can walk into any Iron Range bar on the weekend and see any of the 5 character types imbued in Bob Dylan's persona. The greaser, dressed in black leather jacket, white shirt rolled up with a pack of Luckies in the shirt sleeve, dark sunglasses, leather jacket, and a belt buckled on the side, and engineer boots. The hardworking miner, fresh off his second shift, enjoying a cold one before going home to the wife and kids. The a-hole, protesting that his drink is not strong enough and costs too much. The trickster, doing card tricks at the bar and playing with loaded dice. Or perhaps the weirdo in the back booth, drinking cheap brandy straight up and reading James Joyce. I'll read a little bit more at the end of that paragraph, or at the end of that 2.5-page piece at the end of the show. But enough about me. Let's talk about some people that love and admire Bob Dylan like myself. And on the line, we have a man who's been a guest on a handful of times on Stars Over the Prairie. I call him Minnesota's greatest Dylan fans, although God knows there's thousands of us out there. But Matt keeps up to date on it, and he met his wife at a Bob Dylan show, and he's taken all his kids to the shows when he can afford it. And he's going to tell us about some recent shows he's seen and what he's been following now that Bob Dylan is on Willie Nelson's Outlaw Music Tour. Matt, how are you this morning?
Wonderful. Beautiful day in the Twin Cities, Paul. Great to hear from you. Happy birthday, Bobby.
Happy birthday, Bobby. He was born at 9:04 on May 24th, 9:04 p.m., right up the street at where used to be St. Mary's Hospital, which they tore down. I was able to cop a couple of bricks from there that I gifted to Bill Pagel for his ever-expanding collection of Bob Dylan memorabilia. And believe me, Pagel's got some stuff. You've met Bill, haven't you, Matt?
Oh, sure. Yeah, lots of times. And, I mean, I have to say, taking the tour of Bob's childhood home in Hibbing was a really emotional, amazing experience. You know, you read the books and you know the stories of him as a kid up in the Iron Range, and then to walk the hallways and to see the light fixtures in his bedroom that he looked up at when he was a kid, the original wallpaper, the stairs he went down 1,000 times, the garage where he played music with his buds for the first time. Like, amazing emotional experience, and thanks to Bill for all the work he's done to preserve all that history. Because Bob's a musical figure, and he entertains us, and that's great. But he's also a historical figure, and that's what I think people like you and I and Bill really appreciate is, that Bob, we're fortunate to be in his time, and so it's important to preserve this stuff, and in centuries, people will still be interested in conversations and things, people that knew Bob, things that Bob touched, or things that Bob sang, his words, his music. Bill's done amazing things in that regard.
Have you been down to the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa, Matt?
I haven't been there yet. No, I haven't carved out the time quite yet. I look forward to it, though.
Well, yeah, you're gonna love it. I was down there in January. It's just a phenomenal museum, and of course, right next door to the Woody Guthrie Museum, which is also an amazing facility. With of course, no Bob Dylan without Woody Guthrie, and Woody was so prolific. I mean, he wrote, Bob wrote 600 songs. Woody wrote 3,000. Woody also wrote articles and books and was a sign painter and a cartoonist. And there's all of that stuff. So if you get down to Tulsa, which is a beautiful city, a lot of music, great musicians came from there. Leon Russell, who worked with Bob Dylan. Jim Keltner, who recently played with Bob on one of these last tours. And J.J. Cale. David Gates from Bread, and more. Of course, the home of Kane's Ballroom, which is 101 years old, so there's a lot to see when you go down to Tulsa. So, Matt, you're the guy that keeps up almost show to show with Bob. So tell us what's going on with the now recently on the Willie Nelson Outlaw Tour that Bob's been on. What are the changes? What are the songs? Who's playing? And more.
So he did get the new drummer from David Letterman's band. There's one change in the band. And the band actually has a very different sound than it had in the spring. If you remember when we talked in April, I enjoyed those Rough and Rowdy Ways shows, but I also said that I'd really like to experience the set list changes that come with the more kind of relaxed summer and outdoor show vibe things. And man, was I right, because I would have dropped $10,000 at the drop of a hat just to see him play Mr. Tambourine Man for time. He played Mr. Tambourine Man, and it sounded like he actually remembered the melody of it, and it sounded great. And he played Tom Thumb's Blues and Blind Willie McTell, and then he had a couple of surprise covers to end those first couple of shows. He played Rainy Night in Soho by the Pogues, and then he played Garden Party by Ricky Nelson, and it sounded fantastic. It sounded like he'd been rehearsing it every day for a month.
You know, he used to, back when I saw him in 1990, he used to cover Lonesome Town by Ricky Nelson. And it was one of the most powerful songs in his set. You know, Bob and Ricky were, you know, somewhat of the same age. And, of course, Ricky, you know, with his television fame and was a really good musician and singer, really good-looking guy, too. And, of course, had James Burton, the great guitar player who went on to play for years with Elvis Presley. And so Bob always had a really abiding appreciation for Ricky, and evidenced by not only him doing Lonesome Town back in the day, but now pulling out Garden Party. And isn't Bob, I can't remember that song, but isn't Bob kind of slyly referenced in Garden Party in the lyrics?
Yeah, it's I might butcher it, but I think it's Mr. Hughes wearing Dylan's shoe, or in Dylan's shoes wearing his disguise. And of course, Bob said right through it like it had nothing to do with him. So. But he said in an interview his favorite song where he's referenced is Garden Party. And Chronicles, one of the cool things about his book he wrote in 2004 is that it's kind of surprising, like some of the influences and some of the artists that he expresses appreciation for. And he does talk about like a shared kinship with the Ricky Nelson, which kind of surprised people because musically they don't seem like they'd have much in common. But he said that he felt like they came from the same world and the same background, kind of.
Huh. You know what? I read a little piece of trivia that I would like to share with my audience because, of course, Bob played under the pseudonym of Elston Gunn, played a few shows with Bobby V in Fargo. Of course, Bobby V was the one after the horrific Buddy Holly plane crash, filled in up at the Fargo Auditorium. But Bobby V is half Finn.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, now you do. See, that's why you got to listen to Stars Over the Prairie to get this stuff, man.
Yeah, where else are you going to find that?
I loved it. I met Bobby V in 2007. They did a Dylan retrospective at the Weissman Art Museum in Minneapolis on the U of M campus that my friend Colleen Sheehy put together, and I was able to meet Bobby, and man, he looked like $1 million and couldn't have been sweeter. And I know his son Robbie V. Robbie plays around, really good guitar player, and keeping on in his father's footsteps. Let's talk a little bit about this great version, the new version that I've seen online of All Along the Watchtower.
Yeah, he brought up Billy Strings to play with him for the first time on that song. Was it last night or the night before? It's kind of a hearkening back to the original, an acoustic-based version and with some really good singing. And, it sounds really good. Bob's really belting out some songs right now. He's in great voice. But
there's a little change in there. There's a bridge because the song itself just goes from A minor, G to F over and over and over and over. But now he throws in, I believe it was a A minor, G, F, and then he goes from C to A. I was watching it last night. It's really, it's great. It works really well. The other thing, now that you can, as you know, Matt, you and I, you've seen more Rough and Rowdy Way shows than I have. But the first time when I saw that tour out in 2022 with my buddy Chris Smolke at the Pantages in Los Angeles, I saw 2 nights. That was the first time where you had to, they would take your phone and lock it in a pouch so you weren't able to, record or take pictures, which actually works really great. Now, obviously they're not doing that on the Outlaw Tour because there's, 10 minutes before after the show's over, you're seeing videos of Bob Dylan. But really what I thought was interesting, what I liked, was he's letting the guitar players play a little bit more.
Yeah, that's after the very first show of this tour. That's what a lot of the talk online was like, this band sounds like a completely different band because the Rough and Rowdy Ways material, as I talked about last time with you, has gotten sparser and sparser, and it's almost like Bob's solo piano with just like this light instrumental backing on the Rough and Rowdy Ways material. And now, I mean, everybody knows these guitar players can shred, so it's like they can do as much as Bob asks them to do. And so when they're given a little bit of a leash, they can really, really play. And so I think the summer shows, Bob's looking for a bigger sound. He's got bigger outdoor audiences. He's trying to keep their attention. So the songs are all much more like arranged and a lot more instrumentation. And I think people were surprised that he had like a 3-week break after Rough and Rowdy in the spring, and it seems like he and the band really took the time to make sure that these Outlaw shows were really well put together. They're really well rehearsed right now.
Well, it's 84 years old, hardest working man in show business. I remember one of my frustrations over the years seeing Bob, especially when he had the great Charlie Sexton and Larry Campbell, was those two guys were two of the best electric and acoustic guitar players in the country. And Bob would be taking this guitar solo. It's like, Bob, give it to Charlie, give it to Larry. And when he would finally let them loose, oh my God, they would take those songs into the stratosphere. The other thing that I would love to see him reincorporate into his shows is harmony singings, because those Dylan songs always have such strong choruses. And back in the day when Larry and my old buddy Bucky Baxter and Charlie Sexton would sing along, man, it would just fill up those things, and they'd become the true anthems live and in 3D that you'd always imagine in your mind. But the bottom line is I'm glad he's letting Doug and Bob Britt play guitar. I do have a little personal connection. Etta Britt, who's Bob's wife, sang on my record that Bucky Baxter produced down in Nashville in 1992 with her sister. And so when I heard that fella named Bob Britt was playing guitar with Bob, I said, it's got to be related to Etta. And sure enough, they are married. Well, Matt, so what shows are you planning on going to see this summer? You got any other on your itinerary?
Tonight I will be at Dick Cohn's house. He does a concert series all summer in his front yard in St. Paul. Bob's old traveling buddy, his friend from summer camp and from college, and treat to know Dick all these years too. And so he's got a Bob cover band playing on his front lawn. And so me and my wife and the kids are all going to be enjoying Bob's music tonight under the sun in St. Paul. It's going to be a very fun time.
That sounds like fun. Well, Dick and Val Cohn are good friends of my guest, Gina LaFond, who will be playing here in just a little bit. And when you see Val, ask her, say, why aren't you booking Metsa at any of those shows?
I can throw it.
I'd love to do it, and we love Dick and Val. Well, have a great time. Say hi to everybody there, Matt, and thanks for taking time on Stars Over the Prairie, and happy birthday, Bob Dylan.
Happy birthday, Bob, and people of Hibbing and Duluth. The main thesis of my chapter in Bob Dylan in Minnesota, the book, was that Bob really does appreciate his time up there. He's a quiet guy, so he's not going to be rah-rah about it, but I think he's a quiet leader. He set an example for what people from the Iron Range can go out into the world and accomplish. So I think everybody up there should really have an appreciation for that, and happy birthday, Bob.
Thanks, Matt. Have a great day. Say hi to Jennifer and the kids.
Will do. Bye, Paul.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's hear from our sponsors.
Let's do that, and then we've got Gina LaFond warming up with that Beautiful little guitar of his, and we're going to play a little bit and talk a lot. All right.
I'm Joe, and I had Z LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. The funny thing is I absolutely hated buying a contact solution because I thought it was such a racket having to spend $15 on a bottle of contact solution. And that's just one thing, is just not having to buy that stuff anymore, or glasses or anything like that. For me, it's mainly just I like to hunt and fish and everything, and not having to bring that stuff along, especially in the winter when I go ice fishing and stuff. It gets a pain when I get to the end of the day taking my contacts out, and then if a rattle reel goes off in the middle of the night, I'm fumbling for my glasses to throw and try and catch a fish.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
You're invited to the Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, open for another season for all your candy pleasure. They're located on Scenic Highway 61, 10 miles north of Duluth in Knife River. They're third and fourth generation candy makers using traditional copper kettles to make their caramels, fudge brittles, and chocolate-dipped hot air. When you visit Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, be sure and try their famous nutty ice cream bar. Tell them you heard it on Stars Over the Prairie. Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, located just 10 miles north of Duluth in Knife River.
If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that has been out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing, go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
Gray Wolf Lodge, located on gorgeous Pelican Lake in beautiful Orr, is the great getaway in northern Minnesota. Featuring affordable, modernized cabins that rent by the week or even a few days, Gray Wolf Lodge is your place to treat the family or just yourself for a relaxing time away from it all. With great fishing, yoga classes, massage, boat rentals, a sandy beach, a common gathering area with a fire pit, and the gorgeous and rustic Gray Wolf Lodge, hosts John and Carol have thought of everything for your unforgettable stay. Give them a call at 1-800-840-9653 or go to graywolflodge.com to see all that they have to offer. Gray Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods.
Every day deserves a superior beer. Earth Rider Brewery's decorated brewers hand-select hops that lend citrus notes to the crisp and easy-drinking Superior Pale Ale. Visit Earth Rider Brewery's Cedar Lounge Taproom on the Working Harbor in Superior for their award-winning flagship and seasonal brews on tap and to go. To find out much more about Earth Rider Brewery events, join the mailing list and locate Earth Rider Beer near you at earthrider.beer. Hold fast.
River City Records and Books, voted Best Record Store of 2023 in the Twin Ports by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records, from classic rock to punk, grunge, and metal, to hip-hop, rap, and jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
Hey, it's Curly from the Salty Dogs, and you're listening to Stars Over the Prairie with Paul Metsa.
Well, there's all kinds of prison, and there's all kinds of jail. Somebody wins,
somebody fail in a world full of trouble. Well, I've had my share. Some men get away with murder, and some get the chair. Some get the chair.
You are back with Stars of the Prairie. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I'm so excited to have my old friend Gino LaFond in the studio with me. Gino, you and I have known each other for 40 years, right?
Oh, I think maybe even more than that, man.
Yeah, I mean, since...
We've had some wonderful experiences.
Since we got... How are we doing on that microphone, Chris?
I got it on. That's strange that we don't have anything there. Keep talking. I think I might switch you to the other mic.
Well, Gino LaFond, while we're switching microphones around, played with Larry Keegan for years. Larry, any of you know your Bob Dylan history. Larry was good friends with Bob Dylan since they met at Herzl Camp in Webster, Wisconsin, and was with them friends to the end. Larry, unfortunately, had 2 accidents. A diving accident when he was a teenager, lost the use of his legs, and then a car accident a little later on and became a quadriplegic. But still, if you ever hung out with the guy, you wouldn't even assume he wasn't more than completely there, although he was in a wheelchair. But the guy that hung out with him and played guitar and was playing on that last song we just heard with Larry Keegan is my guest, hopefully on a live microphone, Gino LaFond.
I'll just give him mine.
Oh, man. All right, here we go. We're moving it around. You know, we got to talk to the heads of state here at KDAL and see if we can get some new equipment. Gino's moving down. He brought his guitar, so we're going to have him play. Of course, coming up in the second hour, we got archive interviews with Leroy Hoykala, who is the drummer in Bob Dylan's high school band, the Golden Chords. B.J. Ralston, who was Bob's high school and English and humanities teacher. And then we're going to be into a little bit from Sherwin Linton. And then after that, we're going to replay an interview we did with Louis Kemp when Stars of the Prairie just got on the air. All right, big time radio here at KDAL, 610 AM, 103.9 FM. Oh, I think I hear a little bit. Gino.
I think we got something, don't we?
There we go.
All right.
Gino, like I said, you and I have known each other for a long time.
The years pile up, don't they? And I want to salute you for what you've done your whole life, man. You've stuck with it all the way, and you've done some incredible things, written books, written songs, played all over the world. I got to hand it to you, Paul. You got more energy than any old man I know.
Beats working for a living.
Well, you work at it, though.
Oh, yeah.
You do a good job.
We had a great show with Greg Inhofe and Sonny Earl at the Alhambra. On Tuesday, we did a salute to Dylan. Beautiful theater, man. You got to play there, 60 seats. Yeah. It's like walking back in time. And then I want to thank everybody out there. We had a lot of people that listened to the show that came to the Ukraine benefit. We raised $5,000. Our net was about $4,500 that we sent to Nova Ukraine. So thanks for all of that. But Gino, tell the people out there in Radioland about the great Larry Keegan.
Wow, I could talk for days about that. I know one thing, my life would be entirely different if I hadn't met Larry Keegan one night at a party. We sang a couple songs, and he called me up at 6 o'clock the next morning, and he says, "Hey, you want to go to Mexico?" Honest to God, this is the truth. And I said, well, yeah, I'm on break from school. I'm in college. I'm at the U. And I said, well, yeah. When are you going to leave? He says, in about an hour. And that was the start of the adventure. We drove all the way to Guadalajara, Mexico, together with Alfonso, his partner. But Larry was a force of nature and inspiration to so many people. And I was so lucky. Larry and I wrote songs and we sang. And he couldn't scratch his nose, but he'd go out and sing for people and try and cheer them up.
Yeah,
he was that kind of guy. Really inspiring.
And he was, in a wheelchair. His head was always a little cocked to the left or right. And, Alfonso would bathe him and clothe him and feed him.
Brush his teeth.
Oh, yeah. Alfonso was just an amazing. Is he still around somewhere?
I think I haven't seen him in years, but I think he's living in St. Paul. I think he's working in a meat factory, meat processing.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
You and I go down and check him out. He was such a sweet guy.
I had a phone number for him, but it doesn't work anymore. So I know he married a pig farmer's daughter, and that was his dream. He wanted to have a pig farm, so I hope he has it. Alfonso
well,
was
man, you got a dream, man. You got to have a dream. Now, Gino, tell us, you go, you look a lot younger than I am, but you actually saw Bob Dylan at the Scholar Coffee House in, 1960?
Yeah, 59 or 60. I was a freshman at St. Thomas, and we used to go over there because there were beatniks over there, and that was cool, and they'd snap their fingers and read poetry, and we thought that was so cool, and they'd smoke these black cigarettes, and we could get near beer, which was almost beer, had no alcohol in it, but it was cool because and we'd go over there, and then every once in a while somebody'd get up and play some music, some old folk songs, like Spider John Kerner would get up and play, and that's when I first saw him. And Bob would get up and play, and nobody knew who he was. He was still Bob Zimmerman almost at that time.
Right.
And I'm just, this is an interesting guy, kind of a weird voice, and then I got to meet him in 1975 when Larry took me out to the Rolling Thunder review, and that was the start of 15 years of being able to go out and hang out with all those different band members, and we did it 2 or 3 times a year for a couple weeks at a time. And for me as a songwriter, it was absolute heaven, Met Scarlett Rivera and Ramblin' Jack, and they've been my friends since 1975, and such a blessing to have had Larry in my life. And he passed 24 years ago.
On 9/11 of all days.
The 9/11.
He was 60 years old.
Yep.
I remember getting that phone call.
Yeah, I know.
The toughest day you've been since Kennedy's assassination.
Right.
And then you get a call that Larry passed.
Yeah.
But no, I've got nothing but great memories, and I'm sure you do. But what was it like? Because I know you actually just hung out with Bob, and you're just like buddies hanging on, going on the tour with them, watching these shows. Well, but what was like personally hanging out with Bob Dylan?
Well, his first advice was, here's a laminate. You do whatever you want, go wherever you want. Just don't get arrested. That screws everything up. And he was always so, people were so kind to Larry, of course. Nobody knew who we were,
right.
But we were Bob's friends. And so they just treated us, it was such a special
experience.
Experience, thank you. Yeah, and that went on for so many years. And Bob Bob always knew when someone was trying to get something from him.
Yeah.
He could spot that a mile away. But he'd always give me a hug every time we ran in. He'd give me a little hug. How you doing? All right, And it was just amazing in so many ways. That's for sure.
I know enough about him to know everybody that knows him said he's got a really killing sense of humor.
You talk about Dick Cohen. My friend Dick Cohen. We were there backstage one time, waiting for the show to begin, and Bob. He had this ability to just appear out of nowhere. I don't know how he did it, but he walked in the green room, and he saw Dick standing there, and he and Dick went way back to Herzl Camp. They knew them way back there, 14 years old, and Bob walked in. He saw Dick, and he put his hand in a cooler that was full of beer and ice and everything. He put his hand in this cooler. And it was just freezing cold, and he took it out and he shook hands with me. Yeah,
that's like Buster Keaton territory.
Oh man, it was always a thrill. Of course, you can't. He has so much charisma, and he walks in the room and everything stops.
Right.
You know what that's like. But it was an incredible experience every time. And meeting all those different band members over the years, too, you know, as it changed in 15 years that we traveled together. It was truly amazing.
Well, I was Googling around last night ahead of today's show, and there's a great, it's not the great video quality, but there is a great clip on there of you and Larry at Cafe Extemp with Scarlett Rivera.
Oh, boy, that's an old. I think Larry was 40 years old when we did that because I wrote a birthday song.
You had a full head of really dark hair. You still look good, Gino, but you're just kind of a studly dude back then.
Well, now I have a 5 head, not a 4 head. I have a 5 head. So.
Well, you brought your guitar. Let's. What are we going to hear?
Well, this is a song I wrote during the pandemic, and it's kind of my prayer for Mother Earth. It's called Balance Point. There's always a dog barking out there somewhere. Or a big old truck backing up late at night. We're probably never going to agree on everything. We can try and get just this one thing right. Somewhere in the middle there's a balance point where everything works and it all makes sense. And the clocks all strike in unison, reminding us to stay in the present tense. There's always a bird singing at sunrise. There's always a wolf howling at the moon. We all want to get to heaven. No one wants to go too soon. Somewhere in the middle there's a balance point where everyone wins and it all makes sense. And the bells all chime in unison, reminding us to stay in the present tense. Seems like life is like a teeter-totter. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Mother Earth is just looking for that balance point. It's there in everything to be found. Somewhere in the middle there's a balance point where everyone wins and it all makes sense. And the drums all beat in unison, reminding us to stay in the present tense. All that there is the present tense.
That's a great song, Gino.
Thank you, Paul.
That guitar sounds really good.
I love this.
What is
thing.
that?
This is a Taylor GS Mini.
Oh, wow.
And Amy has one. My partner Amy has one that's 10 years old, the exact same guitar, and I love it because it's smaller and it's not, and it plays really nicely. And I was playing hers so much, she says, "Go get your own." No one's ever said that to me before. So I went and bought the new version of it, and I just love it. I play it all the time. My parents gave me a 1962 brand new Martin D28 that I played my whole life. And then I got this thing. And the Martin is a treasure, but it's a handful. You know what it's like to play a big guitar like that. And this thing is just sweet. I love it.
Well, and I've seen that D28. And
Bob played it, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw that Scorsese film recently, a couple of years ago, about the Rolling Thunder.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little segment at the end of that, maybe 40 seconds long. When I met Bob, the next morning, Bob says, "We're going to go with you in Larry's van, and I'm going to get a film crew, going to get a light guy and a camera guy, and Scarlett. We just met, and he says, Gino wants you to drive to the next gig." And we're going to go and do something, because they were filming Ronaldo and Claire at the time, so there were cameras everywhere all the time. So they hopped in, they all got in the car, and the cameraman, the lightman, Scarlett. And the scene that Bob saved for all those years, 44, 45 years, Larry and he are sitting in the back of Larry's van singing "You're Cheating Heart," and they're playing My Old Martin.
Wow, I remember that scene.
And he saved it for all those years. That's how much Larry's friendship meant to Bob.
Right.
He was such an inspiration. And so my guitar is more famous than I'll ever be.
Gino, did Bob dedicate Street Legal to Larry?
Yeah, I think he got a gold record for it.
Wow.
Yeah, he's mentioned on the gold record. I've seen it on Larry's.
And there is a great shot. I don't know if Larry gave me a copy. I've got a copy of it, but you can track it down on the interwebs of Bob looking like Bob Dylan with the hair and the sunglasses and the black leather jacket, playing saxophone.
Yep.
Behind Larry.
Yep.
On Chuck Berry's "No Money Down."
He invited him out as the encore, and it was a really cool thing. And luckily, well, the neat thing was Bob never played the saxophone, and he's never played it again, I would guess. But he was honking away with Larry, and Larry singing "No Money Down," and the backup singers. It was just so wonderful. But the really cool thing to me was when the song was over and he got a big applause, Bob could have waved somebody in to wheel Larry off. Yeah. Bob wheeled him off himself.
Wow.
And I think that's in the video, too. I think that was really special. That shows how much Larry meant to him.
A lot of respect between both those men.
Yeah, absolutely.
What now? Larry Keegan and Gina LaFawn played at a bridge benefit that Neil Young puts on out in California, right?
Oh, man, that was something. Yeah,
I've got a T-shirt with your name on it, with Neil and the rest.
I do, too, somewhere. Yeah. I do, too. Yeah. Well, that was... We sent a couple of songs that we had written. I noticed, I was there the year before I saw that show, and I noticed there weren't any wheelchairs on stage, and this whole thing was to raise awareness and money for this bridge school, which Neil and his wife Peggy at the time started, because Neil has two severely disabled children, and they started this school so that kids could get equipment so they can talk and communicate with people. That was their biggest thing. And every year Neil would have this concert, 30,000 people at Shoreline Amphitheater.
Wow.
And he raised $300,000 or more for this school. And we sent him a song just on a cassette, I think. I can't even imagine. And just who knows if it would happen. So all of a sudden we get a phone call that says, "You guys are going to open the show."
Wow.
This was 1990 when that big storm hit, that big winter storm hit in Minneapolis. We sat on the runway for 4 hours, and we kept being, I thought, here's old Buddy Holly all over again. He didn't like it. Somehow we got out there. They met us with a limousine, I swear to God, picked us up, treated us like, it was a songwriter's thing. He'd invite, Don Henley, play song, Willie Nelson, all these people, because they're songwriters. So we got to open the show. Cheech Marin was the master of ceremonies, and I still have a video. But anyway, we came back. He actually asked us a second time, 2 years in a row we got to do that. So I thought that was a really honor. And the second year there were kids, wheelchairs all over the stage, and
wow,
it was an incredible experience.
Well, Gino, it's such a pleasure to see you again. Let's hike up after this. Let's go up and go to get some cupcakes up at the Bob Dylan birthday party at 517 3rd Avenue.
Yeah,
and it was nice chatting about our good friend Larry Keegan.
And shout out to the people that put the Duluth Hibbing Dylan Fest together.
Yeah, Zane Bale and their gang, they did a great job. And they've got a big show. They have an author tomorrow at Wusso's Cafe.
Right.
If you go to Dylan Fest 2025, we're going to end this episode or this segment on Stars Over the Prairie with a brand new song by Gino LaFond, and then a great second hour coming up.
Why can't we learn to get along? Be kind to the lost and lonely. How come I had to write this song? Be kind to the sick and lame. We built industry.
Feed the hungry.
We built philosophy.
Clothe the ragged.
We built cities.
Speak the truth.
We wrote songs.
Work for peace.
Why can't we learn to get along?
Be kind to those who think differently than you.
How come I had to write this song?
Thou shalt not kill.
We fought wars.
Find the balance point.
We signed treaties.
Be grateful for what you have.
We built bombs.
Be grateful for what you don't have.
Instead of feeding babies.
Embrace honesty.
Why can't we learn to get along?
Share your good fortune.
How come I had to write this song?
Share your love.
We built symphonies.
Do unto others.
We sang harmony.
Pay it forward.
We wrote comedies.
Don't forget to vote.
We faced tragedies.
Breathe.
Why can't we learn to get along?
Why don't you play us out with something, Gino?
Well, last night I got to be a judge again at the Dylan Songwriter Contest, and at the end we all got up. All the people, all of these people were just wonderful,
and Josie Langhorst, one of our guests on Stars of the Prairie, she won.
Yeah, and boy, what a voice, man! She is really wonderful. So this is what we all sang together. Happy birthday, Bob. Hope you're not knocking on heaven's door yet. Mama, take this badge off of me. Well, I can't use it anymore. Getting dark, too dark to see. I feel I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Larry used to sing like so many times before.
Live, it Stars Over the Prairie with 8-time Minnesota Music Award-winning songwriter, musician, author, and historian, Paul Metsa. Check out previous show podcasts at kdal610.com. Now, here's Paul Metsa.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Stars Over the Prairie. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I got my wingman, Chris Allen, with me today, and we are celebrating Bob Dylan's birthday. Thanks, Leroy, for being on the show with me.
Well, my pleasure, actually. I do really enjoy talking to people from all over the world when they come here for Dylan Days, and it gives me something to do.
Now, you still live around Hibbing somewhere?
Yes, I live right in the middle of town.
Really? Are you in the house you grew up in?
No.
Oh.
I bought this. I lived in the cities for a while. I was in the service for 3 years. And then I came back to Hibbing. A friend of mine said that you should buy this house. I looked at it and go, okay. So I did. Came back to Old Hibbing.
You Finlanders like to keep it simple.
Hey, there you go. Speaking of keeping it simple, that's one thing that Bob always said. Bob would say, okay, we're going to play this song, we're going to try this, we're going to try that. And he said, don't forget 2 things. Not too loud and keep it simple.
Now, when did you start playing with Bob?
Kind of the story is, in 1955, a friend of mine, John Buckland, said, hey, he lived real close to me. He said, why don't you come over tonight? We're going to do some taping. Because the AM radio, you could get skip almost every night, and the skip would be Shreveport. So I said, sure. So anyhow, I went over there, and Bob was there, and they were taping some of these songs from Shreveport. And it was like Mooning, Jive, things like that.
So you got a really clear signal from the Shreveport radio station at night.
Yes, we did.
Were you able to hear the Grand Ole Opry, or what other radio stations did you get in?
But that's the only thing that I actually listened to with John and Bob. They listened to the Shreveport all the time, and he had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, so they'd be kind of fussy, and they'd pick out some of the songs we wanted to tape. This was back in 1955. I don't know if Bob was playing music then, but he certainly was listening to it.
Now, at what point did the Golden Chords form and start to play?
Well, it was in 58. And Monty Edwardson, who's just a great guitar player, he's natural. He's still playing today, believe it or not, in Colorado. And he said, come on, he's 2 pieces isn't very good for a drummer and a guitar player, but he said, I just want to try a few things on my guitar. But I'd like to have something of a beaten back. I said, sure, great. So we did. We went to his house, and we played a few songs, and it was kind of fun and everything. And some of the kids at school were saying, oh, you guys playing together? I said, oh, we're just messing around. And then Bob had heard about it. So we were going to work one day in the summer, heading towards Stillman's and Sparrows. And Bob said, hey, how about meeting my garage and start doing a little playing? So we said, sure, heck yeah, this weekend's fine. So Saturday we met at Bob's garage, and that was the start of the Golden Chords.
So it was just 2 guitar players, Monty, Bob, and then you played drums.
Right.
So no bass player, so you were predating the White Stripes by about 50 years.
Yeah, that's about it, right.
Could you feel something right off the bat in that first afternoon, that there was a spark and some magic there?
Well, it was kind of neat because Bob certainly wanted to be the center of attention. I have to admit that. And we're messing around with, and Bob said, "Oh, okay, Monty, just go ahead, play the key of whatever was G or whatever." And Monty was just messing around, and Bob started singing a song, and we thought, "Boy, that's really great." And we went through the song, and when it was done, it was a ballad. It was very nice. And I said, wow, that was great, Bob. Let's do it again. He said, oh, no, I just made it up.
Boy, it came that quickly, even back then, didn't it?
Right, yeah. And you could tell that, what is music? It's feeling. And he had the feeling. You could tell right away that he loved the music.
Tell us about the first paying gig for Bob Dylan and the Golden Chords.
Okay. Duluth was having rock hops, and Monty Edwardson, one day we were having a Coke or coffee or something, 3 of us said, hey, we should have a rock hop. And he said, Duluth is having them, and they're successful, they're a lot of fun. And we said, hey, yeah, we'll do it. So we found out what we had to do, hire the police, and had to hire a cleanup man. We went to the Armory in Hibbing, and we made our own signs, which didn't have a computer at that particular time.
Right.
But we used like crayons, black crayons or whatever. Gave them to our friends to put in the neighboring towns. And rented the PA system from Jay's in Chisholm.
Okay.
And then we thought we'll try it out. So we got everything set up, got some help. Some of our friends helped us out. And we thought it probably wouldn't be anybody there, but it was I believe it was a Saturday night, so there wasn't anything going on in town for kids, for teenagers.
Right.
Friday night was teenage for kids. So anyhow, we got set up and everything, and wow, the kids started coming in. We couldn't believe it. And we had the cheapo tickets. Everything was cheap because we didn't have a lot of money.
What was the cover charge?
50 cents.
Okay.
And anyhow, then we start playing, and a rock hop, you spin records. Jet Crippa gave us a bunch of records to spin. And then you play for 20 minutes, spin records, and play, back and forth. It was kind of fun. And we started playing, and it was a very successful. A lot of kids, unbelievable. The place was packed.
Cool.
It was to our surprise, actually. So then, at the end, we were taking the money, counting a lot of change, of course. And Bob said, this was the first time I got paid to play music. I said, me too.
But not the last.
Yeah. Well, I played for you many years. And, yeah, he's still going strong. He's still great. He's a genius.
Tell us a little bit about Crippa's music.
Oh, well, Crippa Music, we used to go there all the time, and they had the little booths you could spin records you could listen to before you bought it.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to go there all the time. And Joe was a great guy. He just said, sure, go ahead. He didn't really care.
And then you could also buy, besides listening to records and things, it had guitars and amps and things you could buy there.
Right. I bought my drums through Chet.
Tell us about the train tracks and the near miss there with you guys on your motorcycles.
Okay, it was a Sunday afternoon, I believe, and we were cruising around. It went to Brooklyn.
Tell me where Brooklyn was. Cause
Brooklyn is northeast in Hibbing, actually. So a suburb right in town. It would be considered in Hibbing. And we're just kind of, I had a Harley 45, Bob had a Harley 45, and my cousin had a Harley 74. And we were just driving around. Beautiful day. And we came to the tracks, and we stopped. Naturally, there's a train going by. And we waited and waited. And as I said, Bob was really independent and very restless. And as soon as the train went by, Bob took off. And he didn't know it was double tracks. There was a train coming the opposite direction, which you couldn't see. Bob happened to see it, dropped his bike, and he was laying there. We thought he got hit.
Wow.
But he was just a few inches, the train was missing him by.
Wow.
But Bob would never, ever talk about it after. He didn't get hurt. He picked up his bike, started it, we took off riding around again. But he would never talk about it. He said, wow, Bob, we're surprised you're still here. You could have got hurt. You could have got killed.
Well,
and he wouldn't acknowledge the fact that it even happened.
Well, and then years later, he put out a record called Blood on the Tracks. Coincidence?
Yeah, I think so.
So now, how old were you guys when you were cruising around Hibbing on your bikes?
Probably about 19, 18, something like that.
Wow, and you probably no helmets back then, or did you have helmets?
No helmets, no. We had the Harley motorcycle caps.
That's all you needed. Now, I've read about Bob going, and I guess you as well. You'd go over to visit a DJ who went by the name of Jim Dandy on WHLB, this little AM radio station out of Virginia that I actually spent a couple of years on when I was in high school. And tell us a little bit about that in the DJ.
Okay, well, Bob said, hey, we have to go to the fellow's house. I got to get there quick because he had to get the car back home. So we went over. I think John Buckland was with us also. And
was that Bob's dad's car? Is that what he had to get?
Yes, it was. Yep. It was a Buick, I believe. And so we went over there, and we went up these steps. There was like a garage apartment in the back, and there was a person there who had boxes and boxes of records. And Bob was trying to go through because he was in a hurry. He had to get back. But we met this guy. He's really a neat guy. He's from the South. And he told Bob, if you want to borrow something, you certainly can. But, I mean, he had hundreds of records. I don't know how a person could own so many records.
Wow.
And they're 45s, all 45s.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Boy, that collection would be worth something today.
Oh, I guess, yeah. So anyway, then Bob took a bunch of them home, and that was it.
Was there a little diner right off Main Street that used to have Sunday afternoon jam sessions?
In Hibbing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was Colored as Barbecue.
Right. I've read about that. Tell us about that, Leroy.
Yeah, well, what happened, the Von Felts owned it. Ted and Jerry worked in it, as his mom owned it, actually. And they closed down Sunday to clean the place up, to get the potatoes ready for the next day, put them in water. And as you walked in there, there was a nice little area where people would walk in, and they had a little space. So that's where we set up. I brought a couple of drums. And Monty and Bob had their guitars and a small amp, and we started playing. And you could, and on a Sunday afternoon, a beautiful day, the kids, wood chip girls, of course, would be walking up and down the street on Howard Street, the main street,
the main drag.
And and they would hear us play, and pretty soon the place was full. And Von Feld said, "Hey, how are we supposed to clean this place up?" You know, but they said, "That's okay. We'll work around it," and it worked out kind of fun. We enjoyed it.
Yes, and you got to meet some pretty girls along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Was your dad in the mines?
Yes, my dad was. He drove a locomotive, but it was very seasonal work. So he'd work about 6-7 months, and then he'd be off for a few months. So, but he made it good.
Now, what other kinds of were there other bands playing at the Armory that you used to go and see?
I can't recall any in the Armory. Well, Duluth was the first start of it.
Okay, tell us about Duluth.
Okay, well, Duluth, we used to listen to the radio station, the WABC, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then we used to listen to a program called Night Patrol.
Night Patrol, I like it.
Yeah, Night Patrol, and it was great. It was all the popular songs as far as rock and roll goes. So we listened to that every night. And we went there. I went to quite a few concerts in Duluth. And they tell me that I went to see Buddy Holly at the end, but I can't recall it. So honestly, I would say no, but they said yes, I was there. But, it's 50 years later, you just don't know.
So how long were the Golden Chords together for?
Well, the Golden Chords kind of broke up when Bob took off.
Did you stay in touch with Bob after he left Hibbing?
Well, his mother worked. She was a great person, I have to add. She was so bubbly and so nice.
And that was Beattie.
Yes, and she worked at Feldman's, and so did I. I sold shoes there. I cleaned up. I did everything there. Feldman's were very nice people. And so she'd always say, she'd have questions written down. Bob would say, have Leroy answer these, what's this person doing and all, what's happening there. Apparently he read the papers and everything. And then I would answer, what, as far as I knew. But basically communicating directly, we did not do that.
So when Bob then went out to New York and recorded his first record in 1962, that must have been quite exciting for you.
Right. But the thing, what happened was, we always at work one day, and one of the Feldman said, "Leroy, put on a Micro Electric. He wants to talk to you and show you something." I said, "Okay." So I zipped down there, and he said, "I just got this in the mail yesterday. I want you to hear it." It was Harry Belafonte's song, the 33, and Bob played harmonica in it.
Right. Was that the Midnight Special?
Yeah, and he was so proud of Bob, you cannot believe it.
After Bob left Hibbing, what did you do?
I went to California. Monty and I went both to California, and I got a job there. I had 2 jobs. I thought it was work.
Okay.
For about a year. Then I got drafted. So then when I got drafted, I came back to Hibbing, and then I went into the service. I worked at the Underground Pentagon. It was kind of fun.
Wow. From being Bob Dylan's drummer to working underground at the Pentagon. Now, you've known Bob Dylan since, my goodness gracious, almost 60 years.
Right.
And you were really there in his formative years, and you've seen his incredible career. How would you sum it up for somebody about what you saw in the beginning and how you saw him be brave and durable and hang in there and keep creating over all these years?
I don't think anybody in this whole world could do that except Bob. Because Bob was Bob. Bob was for himself, but he didn't really show it that much, but he was. he never had a best friend. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, and I mean, we knew him pretty well. Great guy, and once he said something to me about James Dean. We were looking at magazines at Stevens Grocery, and he was reading how James Dean started. And when he read it, he had me read it, and then he said, see, it goes to show you, believe in yourself, never give up.
That is just an incredible story, Leroy. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Okay.
And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Well, I really enjoyed it too, so good luck to you, and catch you later.
Okay, Leroy, have a wonderful night.
That was Leroy Hoykala, Bob Dylan's drummer, and the Golden Chords. What a great guy. Now we're going to hear from Bob's high school humanities English teacher, B.J. Ralston, and then Sherwin Linton.
The late Mr. B.J. Ralston.
And I always told my students this one, I remember. Those who seek for treasure must go alone at night. And when they find it, they must leave a little of their blood behind them. I used to tell my students that if you're going to learn, you're going to have to spill some of your blood. It's not easy. And you go alone at night. You go alone because the teacher's not always with you. And most of this learning yourself. You don't learn it from a teacher. You dig it out for yourself. At least I did.
You are listening to the voice of B.J. Ralston, Bob Dylan's 11th grade English teacher, and a major influence on the young Robert Zimmerman. I had the honor of interviewing B.J. at his house in Hibbing in May of 2007. The following interview is a great example of his knowledge, passion, and intellect.
All right, we're sitting here on a kind of a cloudy afternoon in Hibbing, Minnesota. And I'm sitting in the living room of a gentleman I had the chance to meet last summer when I played up here in Bennett Park. A legendary English teacher, known probably for the last several years as being one of a great influence on Bob Dylan. But as I've been doing some research, you've actually had quite an effect on hundreds and hundreds of people. I'm looking at this poem, B.J., and I know you have a great love of poetry. Maybe we could start this interview with you reciting the Carl Sandburg poem. You want me
to read this?
Yes.
You prefer this to any other?
Well, no. Do you have something else in there you'd like to read?
Okay, we can look at that later.
Yeah, I just thought that one opened up, and
I read this down at the university.
Oh, you did?
For Dylan Days. Grass, the first one I read, and this is called Grass by Carl Sandburg. And this is how it reads. Pile the bodies high at Austerlitz and Waterloo. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass, I cover all. Pile them high at Gettysburg. Pile them high at Ypres and Verdun. Shovel them under and let me work. I am the grass, I cover all. 2 years, 10 years. Passengers asked the conductor, what place is this? Where are we now? I am the grass, let me work.
There's something about hearing poetry as opposed to just reading it that really makes it come alive. You do such a great job.
Thank you. Poetry is, I told them, was musical thought. Musical thought is a good definition of poetry. Because if you see deeply enough, you see musically, you see the harmony in the universe.
Now, you went to school at St. John's, you said, in St. Cloud in Colorado.
Yes.
Studying English.
Yes.
And how did your love of the English language start?
I didn't start in high school, I know, because I was a poor student in high school. We never... It's a difficult story that I have to tell about my background. It was during the Depression, you know. I know you can't use that as an excuse, but I never read a book in high school that I remember. You know, there were no books at home. My parents never read. We never got a newspaper. We never got a magazine. And the teachers weren't. I can't blame the teachers either. It's their own fault, I suppose. I didn't read. But when I got into the Navy, I remember distinctly. You know, once I got into the Navy, I looked around me, and it was obvious to me that if I was going to make my mark in the world, I had to begin to study and begin to read and begin to know things. And so I began to read in the Navy. And I read and I read and I read. I had a lot of years to catch up, you know. And then I studied electronics in the Navy. They sent me to school, a number of schools. That's about it, I think. I just love to read and I love to study. I had to know things. I'm one who is not satisfied with operating a machine or whatever without knowing something about it. I remember when he put in the steam line in my house, I didn't know a motorized valve from a trap, but I had to learn. I had to learn, so I learned it, and I was Mr. Fix-It in this block. Everybody called me about, could you fix my washing machine? Could you fix my toaster? Can you fix this? Can you fix that? And I fixed about everything they asked me to fix. And even Mr. Paul sits over there. He called me a number of times for fixing some things in his house. And I enjoyed that. I just have that curiosity about things. When I was younger and I didn't have any money, of course. I was recently married, but I had no cars, and I had to fix them. I put in new brakes. I fixed the alternator. I kept the car on the road. I didn't do the major overhaul, but about everything else I did, and that's the way I am.
Do you see a relationship, PJ, between the mechanics of, say, a car or a toaster and the mechanics of language and poetry?
Well, it's just a matter of knowing, whatever you're doing, whether you're reading poetry or you're repairing an automobile. It's just knowing things, and that's where I was. I had to know. So when I got in the Navy, I got busy and I began to know. I read a lot of Thomas Wolfe. I read all of his works. I read them twice and 3 times because I just love Thomas Wolfe. He's not my favorite writer anymore because I've grown up, but at one time in my life he was very important, and so that's why I read him. I read a lot of Russians. I read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. I read these kinds of things, and that was it. I was never without a book. When you read, you don't read in a vacuum, I used to tell the students. If you don't see yourself in what you read, close the book and go fishing,
What grade was Bob in when you taught him?
He was in 11th grade.
11th grade. What type of a student was he?
I had good students, and he was one of them. They were all good. And if they weren't good, I made them good, if they taught to be good,
What did it make you feel like when you saw, a young Robert Zimmerman, sounds like he was a very conscientious student, go out to make his way in the world and not only become known as a great folk singer, but also becoming one of America's great songwriters?
I remember, this is so long ago, but I remember, not because he's Bob Dylan, but because he's Robert Zimmerman. And I remember distinctly when he lived in a house where, and he called me up, and he said, "Come on over, I want to talk to you." I remember distinctly. And he went to this house. I walked over, and he met me at the door. And there were a few people in the living room. He says, "Let's sit in this booth over here. There's a little booth over there, I think."
Right.
And your breakfast booth.
Right.
And so we sat in there, and we talked. We talked for some time because he was so excited about the way things going so well for him in the cities. It was not as difficult as you thought it would be to enter the world of music. And so he chatted for quite a long time. And a number of years later, I was in college. I remember the room number was 233. I had a class in there. And he was sitting in the hallway. And I said, "Rob, what the hell's going on? What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well," he had talked to me about some other things. And I should have been invited him to the class, but I didn't. I had a class, so we talked for just about 10 minutes or so. And he told me about he's going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I said, "Jesus, that's wonderful, Robert. That's a wonderful thing. And I'm going to watch you." And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to be on a certain night, of course." And I said, "I'll be watching you." Well, he never showed up, of course, because I guess Ed Sullivan didn't approve of the song he was going to sing.
Right, John Birch Blues or something like that.
And so he never wrote. He never appeared. Then I saw him a couple of years ago over in the church over here. I think I told you that. And I was leaving church, and because I had the Durinuses were the ladies who were, one was a wife of his brother, David. So that's why he was here. And I should have guessed that, that he might be in town. But I didn't, stupidly. And so as I was walking on the church with my wife, I looked at the left, and there was Bob Dylan standing, So I put my arm around him. I said, "Robert, how are you?" And so he said, "Okay." And we talked for a while, And then before he left, he always had a compliment for me, And I'm not ashamed to
what did he tell you?
He told me, "Mr. Rolfson, you taught me a lot."
What do you think of your former student?
Human nature is so unpredictable that you can't predict. You just can't. At least I can't. I can sit in class and I can't predict, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do something. No. You teach them. And that's what you do, and what they do after that, that's their business.
You've got a pretty wide panoramic view of American writers, and how do you think Dylan fits in?
I think each writer has his own agenda and his own style, and to fit him in some places is really not possible. If I think of him, I think of Walt Whitman.
Well, that's a mighty comparison, and that answers that question.
With your
Our studio guest is country legend Sherwin Linton.
Well, I'm sailing away, my own true love. I'm sailing away in the morning. Is there something I could send you from across the sea?
Sherwin, when was the first time you heard Bob Dylan?
Actually, I think it was in 1960.
And where was that?
Over on the university campus, and they had a couple places over there, a couple coffee houses. One was the Scholar, and I can't remember for sure the name of the other one. That seemed like it was the Green Lantern, but I've never been able to find anybody that remembers that. So,
well, there was a place in St. Paul called the Purple Onion.
That could have been it.
Okay, so did you just walk in and hear him, or had you heard about him?
We played, me and my band, the Fender Benders, played down at the Savoy on Nicollet Avenue and later on the Flame, which is just up the street. But after we would be done, we'd go over there. Maybe 4 or 5 times we did this. And because I love folk music, and there was a 12-string, a harp guitarist named Neil Christian, that played over there, and some other folk singers, and Bob Dylan was there, but I didn't know him as Bob Dylan. He was known as Bob, and they'd say, "Okay, Bob is going to sing now." And to be honest with you, he was not the most popular person there because he was doing Roy Acuff songs and had his own. Most of these singers had pretty cultured voices, actually, and Bob didn't. So
you must have loved that, though, those old country tunes.
Oh yeah, I sure did. I just thought he was, I thought he was good, but I thought I was a better singer than he was.
And you're both equally good looking, I might add. So Sherwin, when did you pick up? You told me a great story about when you picked up his record. Then,
yeah, it was
in Fargo, wasn't it?
Yeah, Minot. We were up there, and I was in a record store, and then I saw this album, Bob Dylan, and I thought, that's the same guy. It can't be. How did he? Columbia? And then I bought the record, and here it was just him and his guitar mostly, and I recognized right away it was him, and I enjoyed it a whole lot. Learned several of the songs from it.
Now, you were one of the first people to record a Bob Dylan song, probably in the Midwest, as early as 1965.
Yes, yeah.
And tell us about, was that Girl from the North Country?
Yeah, it was on, I bought another album by him, came out probably in 64, I think, the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, and Girl from the North Country was on that album, and I loved that song, so I learned it and recorded it originally, I think, sometime in 64 out in Billings, Montana.
If you're traveling in the North Country Fair, where the winds hit heavy on the borderline.
When you finally started to get acquainted with the songwriting, how did you view the man?
I thought he was extremely intelligent, and he was an intellectual poet. There was no question about that. Some of his material, I'd be preposterous to say I exactly understood all of it, and
I'm not sure he did.
Yeah, right, yeah. Like that quote that he had in, I think in England or something, where somebody asked him what some song meant. I don't have to explain my songs. They mean whatever you want them to. But, so he was, I just viewed him as somebody that I really had a great admiration and respect for, wanted to learn as much about him and about his music and what he was doing as possible, because I felt I could apply some of that to my own music without being a copycat. Well, I'm sailing away, my own true love. I'm sailing away in the morning.
That was a great trio interview starting off with Leroy Hoykala, drummer, and Bob Dylan's high school band, the Golden Chords, B.J. Ralston, Bob's high school English and humanities teacher, and Minnesota country legend Sherwin Linton. If you're driving up to Virginia, make sure you swing into my buddy Gary Flammer's bar at 2nd and Chestnut Street, one of the coolest bars on the Iron Range, with pull tabs, a variety of beers, sports memorabilia, and good vibes all day long, right on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Chestnut Street. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and after that, we're going to hear from another one of Bob Dylan's childhood friends and manager of the Rolling Thunder Review, Duluth native Mr. Louis Kemp. But here's a word from the people that keep us on the air.
Gray Wolf Lodge, located on gorgeous Pelican Lake in beautiful Orr, is the great getaway in northern Minnesota. Featuring affordable, modernized cabins that rent by the week or even a few days, Gray Wolf Lodge is your place to treat the family or just yourself for a relaxing time away from it all. With great fishing, yoga classes, massage, boat rentals, a sandy beach, a common gathering area with a fire pit, and the gorgeous and rustic Gray Wolf Lodge, hosts John and Carol have thought of everything for your unforgettable stay. Give them a call at 1-800 840-9653 or go to GrayWolfLodge.com to see all that they have to offer. Gray Wolf Lodge, your home away from home in the North Woods.
If you're looking for a great hang in downtown Duluth, I highly suggest Carmody's Irish Pub. They're located at 308 East Superior Street, open Tuesday through Sunday. The host and hostess are Eddie and Liz. Eddie is a retired Chicago cop. If he happens to be in the club when you're there, talk to him. He's got more stories than I do. They've also got a great jam session every Tuesday night from 8 to 11 with Bruce Woodman. So if you're a musician, tried and true, that has been out there playing and just want to go try out some new stuff, go down and hang out with Bruce and the crew. Or if you're just up and coming, bring your horn or your stringed instrument or just want to sing. Go sit in with Bruce Woodman every Tuesday night at Carmody's Pub, 308 East Superior Street.
River City Records and Books, voted best record store of 2023 in the Twin Forts by the Duluth Reader, has in stock thousands of new and used vinyl records, from classic rock to punk, grunge and metal, to hip-hop, rap, jazz, reggae, and dub. Thousands of books, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and VHS. Also a large selection of cassettes, comic books, and music magazines. Stop in and see them at 1814 West Superior Street in the friendly Lincoln Park Craft District. Open 9 to 7, 7 days a week.
You're invited to the Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, open for another season for all your candy pleasure. They're located on Scenic Highway 61, 10 miles north of Duluth in Knife River. They're third and fourth generation candy makers using traditional copper kettles to make their caramels, fudge brittles, and chocolate-dipped hot air. When you visit Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, be sure and try their famous nutty ice cream bar. Tell them you heard it on Stars Over the Prairie. Great Lakes Candy Kitchen, located just 10 miles north of Duluth in Knife River.
I'm Zach, and I had Z-LASIK at Weiss Eye Center. I was sick of wearing glasses. I've had glasses since third grade. Dealing with the nuisance of glasses has kind of reached that point of I just need to get LASIK. I was a little nervous, but knowing now what that process all entailed, I wouldn't have been nervous if I knew. Everybody's really nice here. Not a bad thing to say about anybody. Everybody's happy, and everybody here's nice. And I mean, it's day one post-op, and I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Weiss Eye Center is the only clinic to offer blade-free Z-LASIK in the Northland. To find out more and to arrange your free consultation, call 218-625-1917 today or visit weisseyecenter.com for more information. Weiss Eye Center. See the best.
Hey, yo, how's she going? Don't you know, this is Steve Solkola, and you're listening to Stars Over the Prairie with Paul Metsa, 610 AM, 103.9 FM on KDAL.
I couldn't be more excited than to have on the Stars Over the Prairie radio show my good friend and Duluth native, Louis Kemp. Louis, how are you this beautiful afternoon?
Yeah, I'm good, Paul.
Tell us about growing up in Duluth. What year were you born?
I was born at St. Mary's Hospital in 1942, which is, by the way, the same hospital that Bobby was born in 11 months earlier. And I went to Duluth Central High School, class of 60.
What do you remember about being a kid in Duluth? Did you run up and down those old hills of Duluth, as your friend Bobby said in one of his poems?
Yeah, I mean, we lived at 10th Avenue East and 5th Street, right across from Portman Square Park. And, during my formative years, when I wasn't at school or doing something else, we were living in that park, in baseball, football, the swings, and, every such thing. The whole neighborhood was full of kids. We all congregated in the park. It was great. And, during the winter, we would, toboggan and slide down, the hill of the park to the bottom. They went from 4th Street to 5th Street. So we were on 5th Street. We'd slide down, to 4th Street. Yeah, it was great.
What did your dad do?
So my dad and my grandfather started a company called 8 Camp Fishery in 1930, and they would buy fish from the fishermen along the North Shore between Duluth and Grand Marais, and then they'd bring it back to Duluth, pack it and process it and ship it, to the markets in Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, initially the Midwest, eventually, nationally.
You've got a great book out. I have a signed copy that I treasure called Dylan and Me, about growing up with Bob Dylan, and then you worked with him over the years, including producing and working with him on the Rolling Thunder Review. Of course, there's the great Scorsese Netflix about that. But talk about meeting a young Bobby Zimmerman, Louis Kemp.
Yeah, so I met Bobby at summer camp in 1953. It was in northern Wisconsin. It was called Herzl Camp. It was mostly kids from the Twin Cities, some other Iowa, some from Kansas City. And there was a handful of us from Duluth and northern Minnesota that went there as well. And we were in the same cabin, along with another fellow named Larry Keegan, and 3 of us became fast friends and stayed that way for 50 years. And Bobby came to camp with his acoustic guitar. Would tell everybody he was going to be a rock and roll star. He said it so many times, I finally believed it.
Well, so did, I know, I had the pleasure of knowing Larry Keegan for a long time. And so what, do you remember what kind of songs he was singing around the campfire or in the dormitory, wherever you guys were having fun?
Yeah, there was like a community hall there with a piano in it, which was where, we would all congregate after camp and, to do recreational and social things. And Bobby would always gravitate to that piano. And he would, in those days, he'd be singing, this is in the 50s, so he was singing Chuck Berry and, Elvis and, Jerry Lee Lewis, all the emerging rock and roll songs of that era. And he knew them all. I mean, many of them, so did Larry. And they would just sing up a storm there, and all the kids would congregate around the piano to listen to him.
Well, that must have been during that time. We all at some point in our lives get turned on and get involved with music. But I mean, that was literally the beginning years of rock and roll. So from you guys coming, kind of post Second World War generation, it must have been incredibly exciting to turn on the radio and listen to those songs back then.
Yeah, it was, it was a whole new thing. I mean, it was the evolution of music. You had, Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and all those guys, and all of a sudden, that everybody was listening to, our older generation, and all of a sudden, Little Richard and all these guys, and they changed everything, and the young people, which we were among, really took to it, and Bobby in particular, he'd stay up late at night and listen to the stations coming out of the South, because at night you got better reception, and he got to hear all these songs, the blues songs and everything, and it had a big impact on him.
And he's at the age of 82 years old, 83. Now he's playing piano again, 60-some years later. Louis, so when you guys weren't at camp, how did your friendship develop? Bob, you were living in Duluth. Bobby was living in Hibbing. Tell us about that.
Right. So, we developed a friendship at camp, but so we both lived in northern Minnesota. And so, Bobby would come down to Duluth and stay at my house because, Duluth, there's a lot more action than Hibbing. And that was a common occurrence. And then if we were looking for, more excitement, we'd grab the train and go down to the Twin Cities where we had a lot of friends that we had met at camp. So that was kind of a normal thing for us. over the years. We went to that camp for 5 years. So, we're constantly, renewing that camp experience. And in that whole period of time, he would, keep coming down to Duluth and staying at the house, and we'd just be doing things. Back in the day, it was common back in the 50s, they had such a thing as open houses. So, we were too young to go to bars, and we were teenagers. So instead of that, the group of people that we were friendly with, one of the, people said, well, let's go to my house. And so we go to somebody's house, usually in the east side of Duluth, and most of them had pianos. Whenever Bobby would see a piano, he would go right to it, and eventually he'd get into Jerry Lee Lewis style, pounding on the piano, singing with him and screaming. And the parents were always in the house, but they wouldn't be in the room with us. So when they'd hear this, they thought it was a commotion. They'd come to see what was going on, and inevitably we always got kicked out.
So how did the young Bobby Zimmerman, did he take the Greyhound bus down from Hibbing to Duluth before he was old enough to drive?
Yeah. Initially the Greyhound bus. Sometimes there's friends or family that would be coming to Duluth and he'd get a ride with them. Otherwise he'd take the Greyhound.
Now, and for those of you out there that don't know, Greyhound bus actually started in Hibbing, Minnesota.
That's correct.
To take the miners from town to town. In fact, there's a great little museum, not at the Hibbing Armory, just a few blocks from the Zimmerman House in Hibbing, that has some great stuff on the history of the Greyhound bus. Now, Louis, did you get up during those times? Did you get up to Hibbing to hang out with Bob?
I think maybe we went there a couple of times, but mostly he came down because that's where the action was. So.
Was there a particular record store, Louis Kemp, you might have gone to in Duluth to buy your records?
I got to be honest with you, I can't remember. There was, but I can't remember the name of it.
Now, what about movie theaters in Duluth? Because your generation that, was way before computers and the internet and the 19,000 channels on TV. So what kind of movies do you remember going to? And did you take your buddy Bobby Zimmerman along with you to go see some films?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the big entertainment back then. In the 50s, we'd go to the movies. You had the North Shore, you had the Granada, you had the Strand, you had the Lyceum, all on Superior Street in downtown Duluth. And we'd go to them. They often had double features. That was fashionable back then. And I remember I was a big fan of the Bowery Boy series of movies.
Sure.
Yeah. And that was big entertainment. And I'm trying to remember how much it cost, but it was really cheap by comparison. I want to say a quarter, but it might even be less. And I'd get money from my parents to go to the movies, and then we'd go over to Archie's Arcade, which was on Superior Street. What was it? It was close to Coney Island, and we'd play the pinball machines, before or after we went to the movies.
Now, wasn't there a cool drive-in where you get burgers and Cokes and fries and chase girls?
Yeah.
Tell us about that, Louis.
Well, that was the Skyline drive-in and up on the hill, and we would go there, and that was great. You take your dates up there, and you could get the prize and all that, and you're lucky you got some kisses, and maybe even feelies, and those are great times.
Louis Kemp, tell us about the night you and your buddy Bobby Zimmerman, cold night in February, saw Buddy Holly at the Duluth Armory. Tell us the whole story.
Okay, so the date was January 31st, 1959, Bobby came down from Hibbing because Buddy Holly and this whole group of traveling rock and roll guys were going to be playing at the National Guard Armory. So we were both excited about that. He was particularly excited because he was really into Buddy Holly's movie music. I did too. Everybody liked him. Buddy Holly was a real pioneer, and so I drove my father's, I think it was a 1958 Buick to the Armory, the two of us in it, and it was a really cold night in Duluth. The wind chill, and I checked this, a few years ago on the weather source just to check my memory. The wind chill was minus 44 degrees that night in Duluth.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder what Buddy Holly, the Texas boy with Waylon Jennings on bass, what they thought about that sort of weather, right? Must have flipped them out.
They struggled with it, and in part, it contributed to the death because it was so cold. They didn't want, and it was cold in this bus that they were using to travel from city to city. And I read that the heater in the bus didn't work very well, so they were like freezing. These were Southern boys, and that's what prompted Buddy to rent the plane to fly from Iowa to, I think, Moorhead, Minnesota for the next concert a few days later because it was so damn cold in the bus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What a tragic turn of events. But get back to that particular night at the Duluth Armory. The Big Bopper was there, and Buddy Holly. Richie
Valens.
And Richie Valens, yeah. So how many kids were at that show, do you reckon?
Yeah. Well, it was a full house. I read in the paper afterwards, they said 2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, 2,000. And the whole floor was just full. I mean, we walked in and it was, packed. And Bobby said as soon as we got in, he said, I want to go. We entered from the opposite side from the stage, the farthest, distance from the stage.
Right.
So Bobby said, I want to go right to the stage. I said, okay. So I followed him, and we worked our way through the crowd, and we got right to the edge of the stage. There was nobody between us and the stage.
Wow.
And we watched the show from straight on position.
It must have been incredibly.
He was right above us. We looked right up at him, and at some point he looked right down at Bobby.
And as they say, as the legend goes, the torch was passed. What did you and young Bob do after the show? You still must have been really excited.
Yeah, I think we went to Sammy's Pizza on First Street.
Okay.
That's where, it was a big hangout back then. I don't know if it's still there. Is Sammy's Pizza still there?
One of the first takeout pizza joints on there.
So there was a big hangout. So we went there, and a lot of people went there.
Did you call your friends down in the cities and tell them how much fun you had?
Oh yeah, we were excited about it, and we told them, and Buddy Holly was the guy back then. So we were all, and then 3 days later, when everybody got the news that he and Big Bopper and Richie Valens all died in that crash. I mean, everybody was devastated.
What an incredible life. Now, Louis Kemp, we thank you for your time to be on Stars Over the Prairie. Tell us now, in retrospect, after being buddies with Bob for over 60 years, going on 65, maybe 70, how do you view him now?
Well, I respect him, because he was given this big gift, but he knows it was a gift. Most people, when they're successful, whether it be business or show business or whatever, they think that, that they worked hard to get there, and they were reasonably smart, and they think, they did it, I did this and I did that, and they're not humble about it, and they're big egos. Bobby, just the opposite. He knows that gift was a blessing from God, and that he was blessed to have that, and he has no ego whatsoever.
Louis Camp, and he was also blessed to have friends like you and Larry Keegan and the rest. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you the next time our paths cross.
Absolutely. And my greetings to everybody in Duluth. Listen, you can